The number one danger of caloric restriction is not just a slowed metabolism. It gets a lot more granular than that. Now, I am not saying caloric restriction is bad. Okay, if you recount my videos, I'm a huge proponent of caloric restriction, but caloric restriction takes a lot of responsibility. If you just reduce calories willy-nilly, yeah, you do slow down your metabolism, but other things are affected too, things that truly affect how you feel and your life in general. So let's go ahead and break down some interesting research on what aggressive caloric restriction can do. And I also have not just the number one danger that comes with too much caloric restriction, but possibly what could arguably be number two as well. After today's video, I popped a link down below for a free variety pack of LMNT electrolytes. Stuff is amazing. If you are reducing calories or you're intermittent fasting, you've got to try this stuff. Okay, seriously. So the link down below at drinklmnt.com/Thomas gets you a free variety pack with any purchase. So a free sample pack that has all the different flavors with your purchase of regular electrolytes. Definitely have to check them out. So a lot of people, when they end up getting that sample pack, they give it to their friends or something like that so that they can try it out too. This stuff is 0 calorie or very minimal calories, like 5 in some of the flavors, right? But you have lemon lime, like citrus salt, you have lemon habanero, you have mango chili, you have chocolate salt. So these things taste good and make it so that when you are reducing calories, you feel like you're getting something that's actually helping you, and it tastes good and satisfies you. So that link is down below. Again, it gets you that free sample pack with purchase. So use that link, drinklmnt.com/Thomas. So there was an interesting study that found that caloric restriction in people that were also training hard led to a decrease in what's called mucosal immunity. Essentially in this case, now it doesn't just apply to athletes, but in this particular study, they looked at Taekwondo athletes that were reducing calories to cut weight. Okay, so in fighting athletes, yeah, they have to cut weight, so they do often reduce calories, but this often coincides with intense training leading up to fights, right? So it's a perfect example of reducing calories and increasing activity. Well, they find that there ends up being a pretty significant increase in upper respiratory infections and oftentimes taking longer to recover. Now, what's interesting about this is I noticed this firsthand. Okay, I do a lot of experimentation on my body, and I'm known to take it to a little bit of an extreme sometimes. Okay, a lot of times. So what that means is, yeah, I will reduce calories aggressively if I'm trying to get very, very lean, and a lot of times that also includes me training hard. So sometimes do as I say, not as I do, right? But anyway, point is, when that happens, I end up getting sick a lot. Okay, and it's very, very noticeable. My calories go down, my workouts go up, the instance of me getting sick goes up too. There's no denying that. It's clear as day, and my aura and my Whoop will tell me that exactly. But what's happening is there seems to be an epigenetic effect on severe caloric restriction with gene expression of immune cells. So what this means is at an epigenetic level, when we're reducing calories, the body sort of reallocates interest into where it expresses genes. What that means is we're no longer creating new immune cells at the rate that we would be if we're not in extreme caloric restriction in tandem with extreme activity. So it does quite literally suppress our immune system. So this is a very problematic thing. Now, I promised that I'd talk about the number two thing, but it happens to go hand in hand with this. There was a study that was published in the journal Aging Cell, and this is fascinating because this study took a look at people that were on a regular American diet with minimal activity, compared to people that were doing a caloric restriction diet, compared to people that were endurance athletes, but still eating an adequate amount. But they were ultimately still in a deficit just via exercise versus caloric restriction diet. The results were really interesting. Both the caloric restriction group and the endurance runner group were very lean, had very low body fat, but only the caloric restriction group had suppression of testosterone and suppression of estrogen quite significantly. What this tells us, the endurance group was lean because they were exercising a lot, but their calories were also quite high. The caloric restriction group was not exercising a lot, but they were kind of starving themselves. What this tells us is that it's not necessarily the deficit itself that matters. Caloric restriction in extreme fashions suppresses not only our immune system, but our sex hormones. So this affects your lifestyle, obviously how you feel, it affects your libido, it probably affects your marriage, it probably affects all kinds of relationships, it affects your motivational drive, it affects everything, okay? But what we don't often realize is the role that estrogen plays in how we feel too. So the suppression of estrogen can lead to joint pain, can lead to stiffness, can lead to serious mood issues, can lead to neurodegenerative conditions. It's not good. It can actually atrophy your brain. But another thing is estrogen also seems to be correlated with the immune system. So now I'm seeing some dots connected. Not only is there an epigenetic change in our gene expression of immune cells, but perhaps the suppression of estrogen as a secondary problem is influencing our immune system too. So what are you supposed to do? Not reduce calories? You got to do something, right? The bottom line here is, and I don't want to be biased by giving this as a solution, but it's what's worked for me when I'm not getting crazy aggressive and making myself sick half the time. Well, what I do is I practice periods of high calorie with periods of low calorie in the form of time-restricted feeding. Now, you might click off this video because this is stuff I've talked about before, but still, hear me out. What I'll do is, 3 or 4 days out of the week, I might take an aggressive dip in my caloric intake by fasting, okay? I'll fast for 18 or 20 hours, and then the days that I'm not fasting, I keep my calories high. So what I do is I look at my calories over the course of a 7-day period versus a daily period. So at the end of 7 days, I'm at net neutral, right where I need to be at maintenance, right? Or maybe a little bit more, or a little bit less, depending on what my goal is. But I'm not counting my calories in a caloric restriction phase every day, slowly going down. What this allows me to do is it allows me to keep my calories high when I need to keep them high and keep them low at relatively short intervals. Another thing that you can do is you can take diet breaks. If you're into caloric restriction just generally, then every 4 to 8 weeks, take 2 weeks off of your diet and just eat normal, healthy food with high amounts of protein, and then go back to your diet. This is going to ensure that you're not overdoing it. Now, another thing that you want to do is you want to balance your energy levels, right? So you want to balance your energy intake with your activity. If you're reducing calories too much, it's probably not a good idea to increase your activity too much. Are you an athlete? Are you a fighting athlete? Are you a UFC fighter, a Taekwondo athlete, kickboxer? You might be in that small category where you have no choice. But if you just want to live your life, be there for your kids, be there for your family, be functioning at work, if you reduce your calories, you should also reduce your activity. If you increase your calories, you should also increase your activity. It's that simple, but for some reason, we always want to complicate it so much that we forget that. So utilizing fasting, utilizing diet breaks, and utilizing proper energy balance. I'll see you tomorrow.